Okay, this is David back in the lab again, ready to look at this lens that looks so interesting, and that kind of does look interesting. You can see there are several peaks popping up in our waveform. In fact, I'm not even going to try to get all the numbers on the screen at the same time. We'll just look at peaks and see if we can see what's going on and guess what's going on. It takes a little bit of guesswork for this kind of stuff because lenses can be configured in many different ways: doublets, triplets, air-spaced. It is a little hard to reverse engineer without knowing everything that's going on here, but you can usually take a pretty good guess. For example, here's the first surface, and we know that one, at least we know, is the top of the lens. In this case, the bottom. I'm looking from the bottom. I flipped it so that the typical element that would be facing the world is down, and this element here is the element closest to the camera. Turns out those are usually the flatter elements and a little easier for us to get signals through. So in this case, we've got a pretty thick element, back element we'll call it in this case. And it might be a thick doublet, because normally you don't have an air gap quite as wide as this second space that we have. And it also makes sense because if you look at the next gap or thickness, that looks more like a reasonable air gap thickness, about 1 millimeter. That's fairly typical. Now what's interesting is, here's an example of a lens stack that's so thick that we can't look at it all at the same time. We actually have to scan downwards. So what I can do that. I just have a I'll tip up for a second. I have a Z translation stage, which allows me to push the probe down closer to the lens, and as we do that, you'll see the peaks start to walk to the left. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna go down and see anything else, see other lenses pop up. And we said that this space here was probably an air gap, so this space here might be another lens element, either a single or a double. And here we go. I'm gonna guess, okay, it's purely a guess, I could be wrong, that this might be a doublet again. A lot of times lens designers take advantage of symmetry, right? So we have a 2-element doublet with 2 thick elements, an air gap, and then maybe another doublet with 2 thick elements. That seems like a reasonable guess. And then we have a smaller air gap. I would guess that this truly is an air gap because an element that thin is kind of sometimes hard to make in the size of these lenses. And then we might have another element here, a final element that might be the last lens that faces out to the world. And no, we still have stuff going on here. Ooh, lots of interesting things going on here. There might be some apertures. Oh, and we do know that this has an iris integrated into it, so there'll be different air gaps. And there might even be some thinner pieces of glass to enclose that iris. Could be that. Again, just guessing, unless I cut this in half. I can't really get the exact structure. But, and it gets to the point where maybe what you're seeing are multiple reflections. So when you're measuring multiple stacks, you usually have to do a combination of a physical measurement and translation in Z, and then a more precise element by element measurement with the OptiGauge. And typically the OptiGauge is only looking for air gaps in this situation, because the lenses have been made prior and well measured before they're put into the lens stack, and you're just looking for where the air gaps are, and because that is part of the assembly process. So just a brief, quick look at how a lens stack can be measured using the OptiGauge. You can do it with fairly complex. I guess this is a 35 millimeter, 50 millimeter Nikon AF Nikkor. There you go, a pretty sophisticated lens. Anyways, that's what it takes to measure through a lens stack, and hopefully this video was informative. Again, this is Dave from Lumetrics. Talk to you later.